Welcome everyone. Good to see you all here for this last session of the day. I hope you had a really good conference, everyone. It has of course already been some game topics with Alexander showing us how we can use our IDE as a game engine. So me and Mandy will keep looking into how can we use game principles to make our work more fun. Specifically, how can we train our managers to become game designers. My manager is here today, so I hope she will learn a lot. To start, who here plays games? A lot of people. That's really nice to see. And who here sometimes feel like they just wish the workday was over so they can go and play games? Also a few people. You as well, Mandy. Can you tell me more about this feeling?
Yes, I'm happy to see I'm not the only one, because I'm definitely guilty. Actually, I think the very reason we are here today is because one day I finished my work. But I finished it very much on time, so that I could spend the whole afternoon playing Zelda. I was super motivated, and I started playing, and I finished a lot of main quests, but also side quests, and I was trying to get all the gear. I was doing all kinds of tedious tasks just to level up and proceed in the game. And before I knew it, it was way past my bedtime. Hours had passed, and I thought, man, I wish I could experience this more and more, and during my workday as well. I think most of you probably recognize it. I think we all have a job, or at least the programmers among us, where sometimes we can achieve this feeling of flow and this feeling of losing track of time. But it definitely doesn't happen as much, at least to me, as when I'm playing games. So I thought, I wish I could change that a bit. So of course, I talked to Sara, because Sara and I, and Alex as well, we know each other from our masters in game studies. So I said, Sara, we should talk about it. How can we make games, how can we look at games and learn from games and make work as fun as games?
Would be really nice.
That would be really nice. So we started the journey, and we are still in the journey, and this talk today is part of it, to see what we can take from games, and specifically game design, and use in our daily working lives. So hopefully today we can inspire you a bit to learn from game designers, and take some stuff to your daily working life to make it a bit more fun, engaging, and exciting. So I don't have this one. Thank you. How are we going to do that? Well, we have some main quests, let's say. This is the quest log for today. We will explore a little bit of game theory, and then we will look at what game designers do very well, and we will compare it to how our managers do it. I see her diving away. Knowing all that, we will look at how we can learn from those game designers and how we can use it at work. And before finishing up and sending you off to the pub quiz and the bottle, we will have a Q&A and finish up there. So hopefully our goal at the end of the day, or at the end of the session, is that you will pick something from game design and use it in your work. So this is the main quest, let's say. This is what we're going to do anyway, and we will guide you through it. Now, optionally, if you like, you can maybe pick a side quest, and, for example, prep a question for the Q&A, or even better, think of a situation where you think we could use game design to make our daily lives a bit more fun, and we can discuss it in a Q&A. Or maybe you can already start thinking about what you want to implement tomorrow. And I mean, I would like it if it's something from this talk, but it can be anything of today, really. I think it's really nice if we can take stuff from today and start implementing it tomorrow morning. To become a game designer, you don't have to make games, really. I think the basic principles of game design is really about motivation. And I think parts of game design are parts of all kinds of facets of our life that is not only creating games. In my case, for example, obviously I play games as a consumer, so that's a part of my life where a lot of game design happens. But it's not only there, it's also, for example, I have a dog. I try to train him, I try to motivate him to behave correctly. And to train a dog is really to understand on a very deep level motivation. And in the end, I think that's what a game designer does. It's about making people do stuff, inviting people to do stuff, inviting people to spend time in your game. And to reach that, you have to motivate them. So if I'm not training my dog, I'm probably playing soccer. I really like playing, well, football. But I have a really hard time going to the gym. It's both sports, but there's a difference. There's some play elements. So this says something about my motivation and what motivates me, which might be different for other people. Another thing about me is that recently I moved to Spain. Before I moved there, I practiced Spanish and I speak it on a good level now. But I would have never gotten there if I wasn't motivated to practice daily, because otherwise Duo would come and kill me in my sleep. So there's also some, a part of my life where a lot of game elements or gamification have motivated me to reach some goals. I think I'm not the only one here. I think for you goes the same.
Yeah,
Sarah.
it's really recognizable. I mean, have done a bit the reverse journey of Mandy. I'm originally from Sweden, from the land of IKEA, so putting things together and puzzling is a bit in my blood. But I also used Duolingo when I moved here to the Netherlands 10 years ago to get the basic of Dutch. Games are really a big part of my life, and I met my boyfriend 10 years, or more than 10 years ago in an online game in Guild Wars 2. And that's the whole reason why I came to the Netherlands and ended up here. So without that, without games, I'm not entirely sure where or who I would be. Love playing all types of games, video games, board games. Alex got me into Magic the Gathering, which is also becoming an expensive hobby. But I also think at work, it reminds me, I mean, it's not necessarily playing games, but for me, playing games is a lot of solving problems and puzzling and progressing in the game. And in a way, as a developer, that's a bit what I'm doing at work as well. We are solving problems and puzzling together solutions. And in terms of motivation, I really love baking, and I think that's a really good example of a very motivating activity, because if you're doing it well, then you will have something very tasty to eat at the end. And yeah, both me and Mandy play games, but yeah, it's getting better now, but especially 10 years ago when we were studying, we were not really what you would think of when you named a gamer. But here we are. And I think that's quite important to keep in mind, that a lot of people play games. And I think that's also why it's so important to look at why games are so important. Why is it working? Just looking at the numbers, in Europe, more than half the population play games. That's a lot of people. And just anyone can be a gamer. Looking in the US, roughly half of the gamers are female, so it's not necessarily just a teenage guy sitting in their parents' basement playing games. Anyone can be a gamer. And the amount of gamers also increase year by year. So it is something that's relevant for a lot of people. So we need to know, why is this so engaging and why do people like to play games? And in a way, it is really simple. It's because games are fun. That's why we are playing games.
This is the end of the talk.
But this is also where it gets a bit complex. If you start looking, okay, this is Dark Souls. It's a very difficult and punishing game with RPG elements. Who here enjoys playing Dark Souls and Elden Ring? A few people, okay. Another example of a game is Stardew Valley. It's a bit more relaxed. You inherited a farm from your grandpa and you need to make sure you're taking care of it. Who here enjoys playing Stardew Valley? Some other people. And another example is Fortnite. It's a shooter where you have to try to survive the longest and win of the people in the game. Who here enjoys playing Fortnite? Less people. But so we have 3 different games, and apparently we all don't like all of them. I like Stardew Valley, while Mandy likes Fortnite. So apparently fun is not the same for everyone. And that's really challenging, especially when you're designing games. But at the same time, you love Zelda.
I do.
I love Zelda as well. So we sometimes have things in common. So how does this actually work, and where does the fun come from? That's of course something we need to consider also if you want to use game design at work. And in the end, there's lots of different theories about this and how and why. The one interesting one is a research from Bartel, which is a quite old one. It's been multiple research on top of this one to expand the type of players, etc. But looking at people who are playing games, Bartel tried to then define what type of player are you based on what you enjoy in the game. And he had 2 different axes for it. One was, do you enjoy more dealing with players or with the game world itself? And do you then like more interacting with it, or do you like acting towards it? And based on where you would rank on these scales, you would be marked as a different player type. You can, of course, also be more than them. But yeah, if you like dealing with players and acting towards them, then you're more of a killer. You like playing games maybe as Fortnite or Call of Duty, where you're really fighting against other players, trying to kill them. And on the other scale, if you're more about interacting, but still like dealing with players, then you are more of a socializer. You might enjoy games like MMOs, where you're playing together with a lot of people, having goals, collaborating, solving problems together. And on the other side, you can then either be an achiever. You really want to be the best, top of the leaderboard, and really achieve a lot in the game. Or more of an explorer, looking for hidden things in the world, Easter eggs, things no one else has found. And I'm more of an explorer, I think. Where do you?
Me too. I consider myself an explorer, even though recently I've been exploring the socializer side of me.
Yeah. So we can be in different parts, and I'm sure most of you also can recognize where in this you will fall in. And that's, of course, part of what fun is, because depending on what you like of this, you want different things from a game. And another way of looking at fun comes from a book we use a lot in our study, A Theory of Fun, of Ralph Koster. And I think he describes in a really recognizable way that fun from games arises out of mastery, it arises out of comprehension. It's the act of solving puzzles that make games fun. In other words, with games, learning is the drug. But if you're thinking about learning, that's not something that's unique to games. Especially in the IT industry, there's always something to learn. A new update to your current IDE or framework, maybe a whole new programming language. If you're working in a certain domain, maybe you need to dive deeper to understand that. So in every aspect of our lives, games, even in our personal lives, and especially at work, we learn a lot. So this also applies to work. So why is then work not feeling as fun as games do? And mine and Mandy's theory is that this relates a lot to flow, what Mandy already mentioned earlier, that when you play games, you very often end up in the flow zone, that you can really be focused on the game and just enjoying it. And that sometimes also happens at work, I think, but maybe not as often as we would like it to. And flow, what is that then? It's the really balance between feeling challenged in a way that fits with your current skills. Especially if you're looking at games, they often progress become more difficult the further we play them. You start with a tutorial with maybe very few skills, but the longer you play, you get new skills, you become stronger, but the enemies also become stronger, so you get challenged. So this is what we want to achieve also at work, to feel this kind of flow, that we are challenged without being bored or without being frustrated. When Dark Souls and Elden Ring came out, I really wanted to like the games, because I thought it looked super cool, but they were just a little bit too difficult for me, so instead of being able to get into the flow zone, I ended up in the frustration part more often than not, so I have never finished them. Another take of flow is that it is being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing Yas, or like Mandy playing Zelda.
Exactly.
So with that, we have covered some of the game theory, and we know why games are fun, at least some of it. Maybe if you have some questions for this, you can remember it to later. And we will continue to look then what does game designer do well that managers maybe do less well.
Yes, let's organize a battle between the manager and the game designer, which is her or us. And I don't know, apparently this is what a manager looks like. It's AI, don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, so let's see how game designers approach certain topics that are important in to reach this this flow state. So an important topic in game design is goals and feedback. Games and game designers are really good at telling you what the goal of the game is. Usually there's some kind of quest log, and in this quest log you might not only find the main quest which leads you to the end of the game, but it's also telling you something about some side quest or some puzzles you can solve, and usually it's also very clear which is what. So you exactly know, if I want to continue the story, I do a main quest. If I want to maybe find a new weapon or something, I have to do this side quest so that later I can continue my main quest. So it's very clear what the goal is. It's very well prioritized. It's very well, there's usually a very clear description of what you have to do and how you can do it. And then if you start trying to work towards this goal, the game is excellent at giving you feedback. I mean, if you have to slay a dragon, let's say, and it hits you too much, you will lose some of your health. And it's a very clear feedback that you're not doing well. Also, at a larger scale, for example, in this image, you see that in the beginning, well, Link doesn't have anything. He doesn't even have a weapon there. And here he has all kinds of gear. So there will be some visual representation of how you are doing in your journey working towards this goal. I think game designers and games are really good at communicating the goals and giving you feedback about how you are doing about it. Now, at work, and we're going to blame the manager for this, the goals are not always as clear. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I like my job. I've been working at my job for 10 years. But in those 10 years, I got to take a look in the kitchen. I got to work with a lot of clients, so a lot of different teams, a lot of different environments. And we see it happening everywhere, that we are not taking advantage of the possibilities that our work inherently has. Like you mentioned before, like as a programmer, we are basically solving puzzles, which is fun or can be fun. We usually have a backlog, which is or can be similar to a quest log. So we have a lot of opportunities, but sometimes it fails. So talking about goals, very often we are working for some kind of big company goals that might not be directly in line with your personal ones. And if you have a backlog, well, at least for what I've seen very little stories that have a level of description as the quests in a Zelda game have. Also, there's very often a lack of priority. And if there's priority, all the priority is in this one case because one person got mad and they want you to fix this now. And all of a sudden, there's no balance between your main and your side quests. So if you have this backlog with, variety of quality, and you start working on it, then I think sometimes we lack opportunity for a quick feedback loop. For example, imagine you have your next meeting with your manager. Well, she's here now, and it's probably in 6 weeks or so, because I mean you don't talk daily, I suppose. And in 6 weeks, she says, on the second slide, I didn't think you talked really good about this point, or it wasn't clear to me. Then you are like, I don't know what I said in the second slide. So please, if you have feedback, give it as quickly as possible, right after the talk. I think we're missing some opportunities here in the manager part, or in the work part. So once you have the goals clear, you have to find some motivation to work towards this goal. Like I said, maybe your company goals are not really aligned with your personal ones, and the rewards you get are not maybe as tied as to your actions as you would like. in games, game designers are really, really good at motivating you. They're really, really good at giving you rewards, at giving you this feeling of a hot hand, you know, or being, you're getting in this flow and keep playing. So usually you start with some intrinsic motivation, you want to try out the game, and then you get hooked with some extrinsic motivation, and then it balances out nicely where you have some time invested and you're curious to how the story ends. And then, you know, at the beginning they smash a lot of points at you and new skills and such, and then you really get hooked and you stay playing the game. It's always, or usually, very clear as well what the rewards are for your hard work. I mean, in this Hearthstone example, you can see what you have to do for a certain goal, for a certain quest, and you can see exactly what your reward is. And based on that, you can decide to pick one or the other. Now, like I said, in work, sometimes this is a bit more difficult. I mean, a reward that you can think of is maybe a typical year-end bonus that you might or might not get because of some goal someone somewhere did or did not reach. So it's very far away from your own actions, which is not motivating at all. And in reality, I think for a lot of us, at least if you work with a sprint in an agile way and then with sprints, and then you have a plan for what you have to do the next 2 weeks, and you're working and you're completing all your stories, and then you finished all your stories, and then the reward for finishing all your stories is more stories. Yes, more work. So I feel like we're missing some opportunities there, and it's not really the most motivational reward. Okay, last topic. Let's say you have your goals clear, you have motivation to start doing it. Now you have to do it. In games, the game designers are really good at giving you enough freedom to reach your goal. But also not letting you fall and not overwhelming you with how to reach this goal. So usually you start with a tutorial, and there you have limited options, and the game tells you a bit how to reach the goal. But as you proceed through the game, you get way more options, and you have some freedom in how you want to approach it. I mean, this is an example from Spider-Man 2. Where you can choose which Spider-Man to use to do certain tasks, and also your strategy. I mean, you can go right in and just fight with all the bad guys, or you can try maybe a more stealthy approach and try not to be seen. Now, in work, I think sometimes there's a bit of a mismatch in this. To really get into this flow state, like Sara mentioned, you have to have this perfect balance between skills and challenge. Like I said, games are very good at this. At the tutorial, they take you by the hand, and in the end, they let you loose, and you can use whatever skill you want to reach the goal. But what I have often seen is that managers are really kings and queens at killing the flow, really. What I have heard is the exact opposite. I've heard, you are new, I'm going to throw you in the deep, and then you can explore and learn. Which is the exact opposite of a tutorial. Or I might have heard, yeah, you are the lead, so you should know everything, and therefore I'm gonna call you twice a day to see how we're doing. Which is a lot of micromanagement, and which is the killer of flow, meetings. So, hopefully, if we inspire some people here to discuss this with their managers, or maybe there are some managers here in the audience, we can start taking some steps to make work feel a bit more like a game. And then I like to imagine that in not too long from now, maybe Sara becomes a manager, and maybe I can be part of your team, and then maybe instead of talking every 2 months, we can review how I'm doing every week. You can, discuss my XP bar, and maybe if I level up, I get a nice reward. And maybe we can have some team meetings that feel like a strategic RPG planning before we do a raid. And maybe we can talk about what my profile is. Should I be a healer? Should I be a DPS? And then what people are missing in the team, so that we can create a perfect raid team. That would be really cool, Yeah,
I like that idea.
Maybe work would feel a bit less of a grind and a bit more like a legendary game. So, how do we get there, Sara?
Ah, you have some really good ideas, Mandy. Yeah, of course, we now looked at what are games doing very well and what are lacking sometimes at work. So maybe you can also think of some examples from your own life where you've been struggling and you will finish another side quest. So then let's take a look now how we can approach these things to actually make a difference at work. Of course, it would be great, as Mandy describes, to just overthrow everything and do something more fun, but let's look at it a little bit more realistically to what can you change or we change maybe the coming period to actually feel like we're taking steps in the right direction. One thing to look at is diversity. It is a really important topic, and for some people it might not feel relevant, but diversity is not only about ethnicity or gender, but it's also about personality and strengths. If you're looking at games, especially bigger MMO games where you're working with a team, you might plan to take on a really big raid boss, so that's one of the hardest challenges in the game. And you need to have a balanced team to do that. You need to have some DPS that do enough damage to take down the boss. You need to have healers that make sure everyone stays alive. And you need to have tanks that tries to take the most damage that the healers know what to focus on. And yeah, of course, if you throw in a team with only DPS, there's a high chance you're gonna fail. And you're not gonna finish the quest you set out to do, which is of course very frustrating. And similarly at work, we should take this in mind when we are creating teams and in our team ourselves. So what are our player types? What are the player types in your team? Of course, you could look at the Bartel one, which is maybe a bit more niche towards games, but you have other tools like the disc profile to see what kind of personality are you? Are you more introvert or extrovert? Are you stronger with are you more inspirational or more organized? Because in a team, you need all of them. And it's also good for yourself to know where your strengths are. Because if you know where your strengths are, you know when you can help other people. And you also might know when you are stepping outside of your comfort zone. And when you are doing that, you might need some more help or some more time to be able to handle those skills as you wanted to. And also, other than that, when we were preparing this presentation, Mandy recommended a book to me called The Grip by Rick Pastor, which talks a lot about how can you organize your work to get a more grip on it. But he also talked about knowing when you are the strongest. Are you a morning person or an afternoon person? Do you work best in a team or alone? Do you prefer working from home or in the office? Because if you know that, you can discuss that with your team to make sure if you need to take on a really challenging task and really needs to get into this flow zone, that you make space for that in the moments of the day in a setting where you can be the best of yourself. Because in that way, we can get out everyone's strengths and be a better and stronger team for it. We also should look at our priorities and our quest log. I think nowadays it's very common that we're working agile with Scrum. We have some kind of backlog. But what are actually the goal? Because sometimes I see teams just working on a backlog and no one really knows when it's done. Because as Mandy already mentioned, the downfall of Scrum is when you finish work, there's just more work because it's never ever done. So how can we actually set goals that make it clear for ourselves or for the team where we are going towards, and when we can actually give ourselves a pat on the back that we are finished? How can we prioritize these rewards, these tasks, and especially discuss what are the rewards for finishing something? Because doing good work should not be rewarded just with good work. Also doesn't have to be rewarded with money, but think about what would make you happy. I think a really good example was that from a session we gave previously, where someone told us that the manager would give them praise, but from their perspective, the praise would come on really menial and easy tasks. And that, of course, might feel a bit disconnected, but then you also need to try to think about it maybe from a different perspective, because you getting praise might mean that it means you are creating value or you are adding something to the team. But if this is not what you're looking for, then it's also important to have that discussion with this person to see, hey, this doesn't help me, can we discuss other moments when I'm actually feeling proud of my work? Or turn it around and try to feel proud about that you have created value. And it's also important to think about what are the rewards, but also what happens if we fail. That's also something that's really good in games. If we die, if we fail a quest, we can reload, we can try again. We don't get punished for it, and there's always the option of trying again. So in this sense, it's really important to create strict feedback loops. Of course, as developers, I mean, it's sometimes difficult to talk because for me it's really obvious that before you're allowed to merge domain, we create pull requests that someone has to approve it before you can actually merge it. So that is a way of giving feedback. And sometimes I feel people are not really taking it seriously because it is a moment for feedback, but also for yourself to maybe learn something from your colleague's code. So really take it seriously to see, do you understand it? What can you learn? And also what can you teach your colleague to maybe do better? And we should make sure to set the difficulty. Some games have the option that you can choose how difficult you want to approach the game. This also, of course, helps if we succeeding or failing, but also to be able to make sure that you can actually get into the flow zone, that you are not feeling frustrated or bored. And talk about what happens if you succeed or fail. So if failing is not an option, then what can we do to make sure that we have the highest chance possible of succeeding? And if failing is fine, then it's also maybe okay to loosen the reins a bit and give people the opportunity to try it themselves and learn. Because for me, at least in games, one learning moment, if the difficulty is right, is when I die and I try again, and I die and I try again, and I can actually complete it, and that I also then feel really accomplished. And the final and most important one, try to make sure there is space and time for flow. We talked about it, mentioned it many times. And IT is getting more and more complex, and it's getting more and more difficulty to have the time to really be able to do a deep dive into difficult topics. So try to make space for your flow. Maybe you can try to block chunks in your agenda where you want to have the time to really do focused work. At that moment, make sure you also disable notifications from your communication channels. And also make sure you delete relevant and old meetings and be critical to what meetings you need to be at or not. Because that way you can actually get into it. And something that could also be good to consider is, when do you have meetings planned? And discuss with your teams if those are at good moments or not. Because if you maybe have a meeting halfway through the afternoon, then you have a time before and after the meeting where you're feeling you can't really do that much because you have a meeting coming up. And some days I've had, half an hour meetings every half hour, and then I'm looking at the day, I'm like, well, what's the point here? I'm not going to do something half an hour between meetings, And also try to empty your head, because there's so many things we need to remember. Maybe we need to write a ticket, create a new story on the backlog. We have to call this person to discuss something, respond to an email. So try to empty your head. I've started doing it recently, where I've created my own Trello board with my own to-do list. And it's always a bit satisfying to move something to done. But that means whenever someone asks something from me, I don't have to keep it in the back of my head all the time. I can just write it down in my to-do list. And when I have, one of these stupid half-hour moments between meetings, I can look at it and see what things I can finish. And in that way, we create some more space for ourselves to actually get into this flow state. With that, we have looked at some points how we can actually improve our work and try to make it a bit more fun. And we'll go into some Q&A, and it can either be questions, but we're also very curious to hear from you, your own experience, or maybe things you're going to change from tomorrow.
resonated with me was the guarding the flow, because one thing I noticed in games, if I have a multiplayer game, I not tend to plan our communication moments. As in, no, we're going to discuss strategy exactly 15 minutes after we started the game. So we instead have impromptu meetings. Like the moment something happens, then we start doing the meetings, which in Dota usually involves some feedback.
Some feedback, yeah.
But the same is in work. If I see what are my by far most effective meetings, those are the ones that start impromptu. The moment I need something, the moment something happens, where you both instantly talk about the most important problem, instead of a scheduled, we're going to talk at exactly 15 minutes, stop what we're doing now, no matter if we're in the middle of a battle, we stop doing now, we talk a meeting, and then you just have to hope it's the correct subject.
Yeah, it's a good question, or a good remark. I mean, because I really get what you're saying, and I guess in theory you would say this is bad, because this is all of a sudden, so it kills flow, but I guess if as a team you feel it's needed, it can be very good.
Yeah, the impromptu conversation with your team, something happens, and usually you wait until it's naturally a quiet moment in the flow. We exactly this point in time, we have some time to discuss this, let's do it now.
Yeah, so then the discussion becomes more of flow instead of breaking the flow.
It becomes part of the flow.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's this is something we would like to see more of, and then the other ones you refer to, like at this moment we're going to talk 15 minutes about this. Where it's possible, you would try to evade those, and if you have to have them, they should be prepared, because I think that one of the ways to create value in a meeting is to enter prepared, so that you finish when you're finished, not finished when the time is over. But yeah, it's a nice remark. Anyone else recognizes anything or has some frustrating thing at work that they might not experience in games?
Yeah, one question, like sometimes people say like too much fun is also like too bad sometimes. So how do you describe if the manager and the colleague has that fun activities like which is exceeding? Is it like not damaging the workspace?
So let me see if I understand correctly. You say some people say that too much fun is not good or not productive. I mean, my first thought is that maybe what they think is fun is a bit different from what we are proposing, because I think ultimately we have a job that really can feel like a game, and then fun would be, I imagine fun, you know, in a work context, being in the flow, feeling like you're doing good, you have good rhythm, solving stuff, you have a good level of challenge, you feel you can either solve the problems you see for yourself, or you feel you are backed up if you can't do it. And I think if you look at fun from that perspective, it's not at all damaging your business.
Yeah, I think that's also important to keep in mind with, for example, rewards at work, because of course it's very easy to say I just want to have a higher salary and get more money, but you can also approach rewards differently to say, hey, we actually finished the whole sprint before we're done. The reward can then be maybe that you actually get the time to pick up some technical depth that you're really frustrated with, or maybe have some time to actually learn a new skill. So the reward is not here, pick up more work, but here's time to keep developing yourself and actually create improvement to maybe your own skills or to the product by thinking of what could be something innovative we can add that isn't the highest priority, but that you can then have the time to actually approach.
Anyone else?
Yeah, in my work I have a Scrum Master who's a big fan of game theory and Lego series play and stuff like that. So she's starting to massage our manager into also going with that flow. And one thing I've noticed what really works is instead of promising a huge reward at the end of a project, is little rewards along the way, just
Definitely.
like in games.
Yeah.
We have now a project with this approximately 500 story points, which is developing half a year or work at least. So she just now made a sort sort of timeline or actually a quest.
Yeah.
And each step, each little bit of story points that's done will result in a small reward instead of one huge reward at the end.
Sounds great. I want to work with her.
Everybody.
Yeah, sounds great.
Even is happy
Yeah.
because it still costs him the same amount monetary.
Yeah.
But instead of having to send out a team away to, I don't know, Berlin for a weekend, he can now suffice with cookies and cake and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess it's also more interesting for the one paying because this makes you more motivated during the project, and and he will profit from it. Whereas at the end, he already has what he wants.
Yeah. We already see the story points flow faster.
Ah,
We're already getting more work done because everybody's working towards that little.
interesting.
Little reward.
Sounds really good. And also, I think it's nice that they. You have this short-term goal, let's say, that is within reach, you know how to reach it, etc. And then maybe, just an idea, but she can also, every now and then, have a surprising reward. So it's nice to have like fixed points, but then also some unexpected ones, because they give you a extra bit of dopamine. It would be nice. Yeah.
The side question you've forgotten about.
Okay. One last question.
Oh yeah.
Do you have experience? I know that there are some platforms to apply gamification work. Do you have some experience with those and how to apply them in software development companies?
Yeah, not specific ones, but I'm exploring it a bit myself now also. But for example, in Azure DevOps, I know you can create like timelines and roadmaps, and I think that also ties in with what you just mentioned, that you make it more visible what the road to the finished product is and what kind of milestones you are completing along the way, because that way you make it visible for everyone. What are we working towards? And yeah, when can we actually see, oh, we finished this feature and we can be proud of this one step towards the end. Because yeah, software projects are usually quite long. So if you're only celebrating at the end, then yeah, you have a very long way before you get any feedback.
If there's any more questions, please come to us afterwards so that we can wrap up. And for the ones that want to go to the bottle, they can go to the bottle.
Yeah, so a very short summary. If we look, how do we get to this perfect way of working? There's some steps to do, but we can get there. And what is important to keep in mind that in the end, work is a co-op game, no matter if we like it or not. And in that way, we have to work together to make the best of it. So try to protect the flow. Think about it with your team. How can you set up your day to be most efficient? Make sure to support each other. Keep in mind, if you're what player type you are and how you can work together as a team to be the strongest you can be. Create your own quest log and maybe also a quest log for the team. And write down what kind of rewards you enjoy getting so that you can actually have discussion with your manager of how do you like to be rewarded and how can you work together to make you feel motivated. Because in the end, it is quite personal what you like or not. That's the challenge of making something fun. And you have to help the people around you to make sure that you can feel motivated and engaged. Thank you very much.